I got 14 miles in and I had to walk because I couldn't take how bad my legs were hurting. Took Sunday off, Monday went back out, ran 7 miles, and I was like, all right, something's wrong.
You gotta do hard. But if that's at the expense of your body being so messed up that you can't do anything for like the next month, that's the problem.
I'm not nowhere near as bummed or disappointed as I think I used to be with stuff like this, where like it was everything.
It's just a fitness thing. You're not feeling 100%. You're not gonna be able to hit your 3-hour marathon. Hypothetically, that's a problem because you set all these goals for yourself and you're stoked about it and now you can't achieve it. That's not as big of a problem as like a problem that can't be solved. Welcome back to the podcast. Gabe, Yanez, and I, we are on for our weekly episode. We talk all things fitness, business, life. I just took creatine, Gabe. I feel like $1 million right now. I know you and I have been talking about creatine.
Not how it works, but okay.
So I was making a cup of coffee and I saw that I had some Jocko Fuel creatine just like sitting next to me. I was like, you know what, Gabe, because I had this guy, I was at the store and some guy's like, hey man, what do you think about creatine? And I was like, dude, according to my buddy Gabe, he says there's absolutely nothing bad about it. It's like the super stuff. It's super cheap and it's highly effective and you should start taking it. So I'm telling this guy that and I'm like, you know what? I came home and I took some myself. So I'm on some creatine right now and I'm feeling jacked up and ready to go.
What's been the resistance to doing it in the past? Or like,
dude, it's just the inconsistency, right? It's like, I just haven't, there's no like pushback. I just haven't prioritized taking the time to put one scoop in a glass of water and drink it in the morning. Like, so I'm going to do it.
Yeah, that's the challenge for a lot of people is because it like a lot of the benefits are from consistently taking it. And again, you know, we've talked about this in the past. Supplements are by no means, any supplement is by no means a substitution for just good habits and doing the right thing, sleep, like all of that stuff is so much more important. But when it comes to supplements, and again, this isn't me saying it, this is me listening to a lot of the people that honestly I trust and like, they may disagree on this or that, but the thing that everyone seems to universally agree on, from like Lane Norton to Peter Attia to Huberman to E.C. Singh, like anyone out there that is like well-versed in this stuff, they may disagree on a lot of things, but everyone's like, if you're going to take a supplement, take creatine, 5 grams a day, like lock it in, creatine monohydrate, nothing fancy, and it's good for you. And the more and more research that comes out, the more that there are like cognitive benefits to it. So it's not just about like, you know, just getting bulky, putting on strength, putting on muscle recovery. There's actually a lot of really good things to it. And it's one of those things where, can you get it from Whole Foods? Yes, but you would have to be eating a very, very high amount of meat to get it, which most of us aren't. So yeah, man, it just seems like aside from having to lock in the habit of doing it every day, why wouldn't you do it? It's a no-brainer. Everyone should do it. So.
Dude, so yeah, I'm locked in right now because I had the creatine. I had some MCT powder in my coffee, and dude, so I'm ready to rock. I got a story to tell you. So I'm where was I at? I was out, and Bart, one of our buddies who comes out to the men's club on a regular basis. He's a Train Hard fan. I think he listens to the podcast. Like he's the man, right? He has 3 girls. Awesome, right? And so he's telling me a story. So he's at this restaurant here locally and his daughter's phone died. And so she's like, hey, like they're just having dinner or whatever. She's like, hey, it's him, his friend, and her. So it's just like 2 guys and then his daughter happened to be there. So she's like, hey, can I go charge my phone in the car? And, you know, he's sitting there with his friend. He's like, sure, go charge your phone in the car. Like, no big deal, right? So the car is probably about maybe 150 meters away from the restaurant down like, I don't want to call it an alley, but down like a parking area. It's actually Double D's in Los Gatos, if you know where that is at the end. And then around, there's like a parking lot. And so she's sitting in the car charging her phone. And then her dad, Bart, gets a call from her and says, there's a homeless guy trying to break into the car and, or a text or a call. There's a homeless guy trying to break into the car. And so, dude, could you imagine if you got that text from your 13 or I think she was 15-year-old daughter, right? 15-year-old daughter. There's a homeless guy trying to break into the car. So he has a Tesla. So the homeless guy ends up coming around to the driver's side, tries to get in. She locks the door. Okay, so that's step one. She locked the door. That's good. That's better awareness, right? Then he tries to go around the other side and tries to unlock that door. Meanwhile, Bart is sprinting as fast as he can. I was like, dude, what emotions were going through your head? He's like, all I knew was a homeless guy, and there's only a few of them here in the city. And so he was thinking to himself, this is what was going on in his head. He's sprinting. He's like, dude, I hope it's not that one guy. Because there's one guy that's like a pretty fit, jacked homeless guy. The rest of them are not. Anyways, he gets there and it ends up being kind of like for lack of a better term, this guy, he's in a wheelchair, kind of like he's disabled in some way. And so he wasn't like a physical threat, but he was definitely trying to get into the car. And it just was a really good reminder, man, of like, I was listening to the audiobook, right, that we were talking about fear management and about listening to your gut. And it's like, what else could we be teaching our kids that if they were in that same situation, they made sure to communicate with us and they locked the doors? Or maybe in her case, what would have been better is maybe even like driving away because she's 15. I don't know. I don't know how can you better prepare your kid for that situation? And then imagine how he felt sprinting his ass off. And what he said was, he's like, bro, I'm so grateful I go to the weekly men's club because I wouldn't have sprinted otherwise. And I sprinted as fast as I could for 150 meters and I got there really quickly. And so we were able to de-escalate the situation.
What did he do when he got there?
So when he got there, he worst case scenario is going through his mind. He's thinking, oh, it's that one jack dude. He gets there and it happens to be like this, disabled homeless guy who ends up being in a wheelchair. And he basically just screams at him, yells at him, tells him like, whatever, and just like gets him away. Because the guy was not like a physical threat. Like it wasn't like he was going to fight him or anything. He's in a wheelchair, but he literally wheeled around, tried to open the door, scares the crap out of his daughter, wheels around to the other side. And I mean, dude, if I'm a girl in a car by myself and the guy's trying to like knock on the door, dude, I'd be freaking out too.
That's terrifying. No, for sure.
I don't care if he's in a wheelchair or not. I'd be freaked out. So,
and was that the end of the situation? Like, were
yes,
cops
I asked
involved?
No, I mean, I guess they just like went on with their day, but it's just, it just was a good reminder, like how often are you sprinting and what type of communication should you be having with your kids? Because like stuff like that could happen. I mean, I wouldn't have thought it was going to happen there. And that was just like, it's terrifying to think about, dude. It's a good reminder.
Yeah, the two things that come to mind for me, one is I think it's very easy for people to always think that like, well, this would never happen to us because of where we live or because we go to dinner. Like if there's one thing that I know about Los Gatos is that it is not the place that you would expect something like that to happen. Ever. And I think that the fact that this happened in real life is, if it can happen there, it can happen anywhere. I think that some people would be like, well, if you're in like a whatever part of Los Angeles or like a big city, then obviously, you wouldn't even let your daughter.
The subway of New York City.
Like, yeah, the subway of New York City. Like, you're not letting your kid go out on their own. But I think that what this is a good reminder for me is it doesn't matter where you are. Like, this stuff can happen. And to your point, like having either some sort of like, hey, here's what you do if you need something, or just instilling that awareness, because that could have very easily have been like, hey, she was just immersed in her phone and the door got open. Like, it could have easily been that. And I think that there's obviously a really positive awareness that she had there to lock the door and know that something was going on. So I think that stands out. And man, like one thing that I think about a lot, especially now with Shay, he just turned 2. It is incredible how much they remember and understand, even though they're incredibly young. And it is never too early to start just like, getting these things drilled in. And the example for us, it's not really like, hey, we're going to leave you in the car. There might be a homeless man, but snakes are a very real concern where we live, man. Like, they 100% are. And he's so he just started a couple months ago. He walks by himself. If Ariel's at the gym and I'm at home, he'll come back from the gym because he'll get bored and he'll do that walk by himself. And Ariel will text me and I'll kind of keep a lookout for him. And it's like a straight shot, but he's, starting to spend time outside. And it's a big reason we live where we live. Like, we want him to have the freedom to just walk out the door and go, check out some bugs or like, go check out the grass. That was our intention when we moved here. But I've already run into some really dangerous snakes, like in our well house. We had a cottonmouth, I think, but like some like pretty, venomous snakes, and they're super common around here. So the one thing that we've been doing is we go to the zoo, we see snakes, and every time we see snakes, we tell him, hey, what do you do when you see a snake? You walk away and you come tell mom and dad right away. And he has it locked in. And we remind him all the time. Anytime we see a snake on TV, anytime we see a toy snake, we remind him, I'm like, hey man, what do you do when you see a snake? And he's like, tell dad. And it's like, yes, that's right. You leave it alone and you go tell mom and dad. And it's just like, maybe it's like a little bit of a silly example. And it's also just like really fun and cute to hear him repeat stuff back right now. But I do think that there's no such thing as too early starting to instill the awareness of things that are threats and are dangerous. And obviously our example is very different to what you talked about. But in many ways, it's the same of like, you have to have those conversations early. I hope he never runs into one and never has a situation. But the fact that we're at least, starting to educate him on like, hey, I know you love animals because our kid loves animals like anything else. And they're curious. They want to touch stuff, but we don't touch snakes.
Well, it's a good analogy, right?
For sure.
Like, it's a great analogy. You're teaching like a relative skill set to where he's at, right? Like, dude, a snake could be a legitimate threat. And like the way you explain it, right? Like using the zoo as an example, it's great. I mean, dude, like this book, I put it in the car with the kids and Ashley, and it was they call it the rule of 12. So the rule of 12, there's 12 rules before you let your kids go off on their own. I want to share with you an aspect that I think every dad should listen to. I think this is really interesting. The author goes into detail and he's like, listen, for a fact, I don't care if this is politically correct or not. He goes, if your kid is ever lost, two things need to happen. They need to choose who helps them before someone else chooses who's going to help them. So they need to be assertive to go choose, and they need to choose a woman, period. Like point blank. You need to teach your kid that you need to go choose. If you're lost, you need to go find help, and you need to go ask a woman. And I think we briefly talked about this before, I think, but that was like a major takeaway. And so I'm going over that with the kids, and because of all the things built in, right? But the ready to be alone in public test of 12, I just want to go over a few of them with you, not all of them. They need to honor their feelings if they feel uncomfortable. That's number one, right? Like they need to know that if they feel uncomfortable, they need to honor that. They shouldn't like whatever. Number two, these are in no particular order, and I'm also not going to say all 12, but honor their feelings. It's okay to defy adults. So these are like 12 characteristics that you should review as a parent before your kid goes off on their own. They need to be able to defy adults. So if an adult gives them some type of like, this is a fine line, right? Because you want to be able to listen to adults and you want to be able to take direction and whatever. But at the same time, if something isn't right, they should feel comfortable defying that rule, right? Like, hey, jump in my car with me. It's like, well, no, dude, I'm not going to jump in your car with you. So that's two. Knows how to ask for help. Knows who to ask for help. Those are the whatever. It's okay to strike or injure if they feel afraid. Right? I wrote these down. We went over them with the kids, and I was like going through them like, hey, which ones of these do we need to work on more? It's okay to make noise, right? Because oftentimes kids are told to like be quiet, right? Like imagine like for Shay, you're on an airplane. It's like, dude, I mean, and obviously a kid should not be screaming on an airplane. But the point I'm trying to make is like, they're told their whole life, like, hey, we're in public, like try and be whatever. But giving them the outlet, like, hey, if you're in trouble, like you need to make noise, like that's okay. And this one is really, really valuable is if someone is coming up to you and trying to like take you and the kid is like screaming, to scream, this is not my father, should be yelled as the thing that says. Because like, okay, for example, let's just say you're at a zoo with your son, right? And you want to take him away from those snakes he's looking at. Let's just say he's having like a little bit of a tantrum. People look around like, oh, that's the kid, he's having a tantrum. But imagine if you're trying to take him away and that kid's yelling, this is not my dad. What do you think would happen, right? Totally different response from people around, right? So I hadn't thought about that. So that's a good one. And then this is kind of like a cool takeaway. If someone says don't tell or don't yell, the answer is to yell or to tell. Because yelling, so if someone goes up to you, like Gabe, if someone says, hey, don't yell, that implies that yelling benefits the person and not them, right? So, or by saying like, hey, don't tell anyone this, right? It's implying that if that person told someone, it would be a disadvantage for the individual, right? So teaching them at a young age, like, hey, if someone says don't yell, don't tell, it often means you should yell and should tell because that's the opposite of it. And then finally, never go anywhere with anyone. So I decided to lay out some of those. People listening, dads out there, they can kind of take what it's worth from that. But those were helpful for me.
How are Ava, Kaden, and Ashley like responding to you sharing this stuff with them, like putting the ebook? Because I think that's an important conversation, because I can see kids especially being like, Dad, like, come on, like, do I really need to know these things or whatever? Like, how seriously are they taking it? Is it like, hey guys, I really want you to pay, or is everyone kind of bought in?
It was like a dose, right? So like in this particular case, I mean, we're totally talking like a very short period of time. I was in the car and I put it on and we listened to like 10 minutes of it. And it was a short dose, but it was enough of a dose just to give some reminders, and we moved on. Kind of like not trying to be the guy who's like nonstop about this stuff, but make sure that you're layering in and you're at least having conversations about it. And like there's little nuggets, right? Like the little nugget, for example, about like yelling, "This is not my dad." I think that's a good nugget that I think the kids could take away, right? Like, or you know what I'm saying?
I also think a lot of them are good reminders of why some of the conventional wisdom isn't as beneficial as you would think, or why there should be some nuance to the stuff of like, hey, like always listen to your elders or respect your elders, or, like listen to adults, which is really instilled, especially when I feel like kids get into school.
Yeah.
Because when you're getting into school, that's what school is adults telling kids, where to go, what to do, when to sit down, when to stand up. So I can see that being especially important as kids get into school, and that starts becoming the relationship that they have with other adults that aren't their parents. So super important, because obviously there's value to respecting adults and listening to authority, but within reason, and trusting when you're uncomfortable, and trusting your intuition. So I think all of those are super important reminders, specifically when they kind of make you think about what some of the conventional wisdom, and same thing with the example of like, hey, it's okay to make noise, because it's true. You don't want your kid to have tantrums in public, and if they're having a tantrum, you're trying to bring that down, but they also need to understand that if it's called for, that they should be perfectly okay to do it.
Yeah. I mean, again, we've talked about this book a couple of times now, but that was one that I just wanted to kind of bring. Like, I had written that down as just something like, hey, these are some little nuggets, helpful for me, probably helpful for someone else listening, for sure.
For sure, yeah. Books on my list. I bought the one that Dennis recommended, Endure. I'm excited for that one, and I just started reading. So I did. Not waiting for January. We're recording this in December. Started reading with my nightlight at night. So we found a good.
Wait, is it the red? Is it the red nightlight?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have a red nightlight because, again, I was, in some ways using it as an excuse to not read, and I do enjoy reading, so I'm back on it. So I purchased a book. Oh, man, I can't find it, but it's I just found it at the bookstore. It's the Revenge of the
Nerds.
No, I have to find it. But anyway, started reading again, and I have Endure on the list. I also bought this. I pre-purchased this.
But that's not the same Endure from Cameron Haynes, right? That was a different Endure, right?
Yeah, it's a different one. This is one's all about like endurance training and
dude,
Revenge of the Tipping Point.
Oh, hey, speaking of Dennis, bro. Hey, did you see that Hiller fit bashed me on my 53 kV cliffhanger?
Dude, of course I saw that.
Dude,
that's pretty funny.
Oh man, I blame it on a slippery bar and after jiu-jitsu. That's what I blame it on.
The after jiu-jitsu, I think, is a very valid excuse. I think that if anyone wants to talk shit about your cliffhanger challenge, they have to do a couple rounds of rolling first and see how they feel after that, and then they can talk shit. That's what I would say.
It's funny because like there was a few people in the comments section who kind of like said that, and I don't really, dude. Honestly, like I don't really care. I'm like whatever, dude. I thought the video was funny. I thought it was funny, but it's like there's a couple people like, hey, like he did do jiu-jitsu before. I'm like, all right, cool. Well, there was that, but I mean, it's definitely an area that I think I could, of course, improve upon. What we're talking about here is, if people didn't see it, Dennis Marshall, who helps author our Force Track, is just an insane specimen. Like, he is just crazy. Like, bro, the guy is like, you talk about man strength, he's got man strength. And I don't think he's on like TRT or any of that kind of like stuff. I think he's just like, bro, he's just jacked. And so again, shout out to our force track. Shout out to Dennis Marshall. If you want to be like Dennis Marshall and all of us here, make sure to get on our Train Hard app and our programs. Okay, back to the cliffhanger challenge. The guy does 185 in his arm. Dude, I tried it and like it was terrible. I ended up not doing very good. And I still put it out as a challenge because that was fun. I didn't think much of it. And then, of course, Hiller Fit, who's like synonymous in the CrossFit space for kind of like poking at people, he came and poked. So go check it out.
And Hiller got 193, which is impressive. So Jason didn't do the best job describing what the challenge is. So it's holding a weight on one arm while hanging from a pull-up bar with the other arm, like the Cliffhanger movie with Sylvester Stallone. So like imagine you're holding onto the cliff with one hand and holding someone with the other. It's like what kind of person could you save off the cliff? So and the actual challenge was, what's the max weight that you can do for at least 5 seconds with both arms? So that's an important caveat because a lot of people will be significantly stronger with the right arm than the left arm, but it's whatever you can accomplish with both hands. And Dennis got 185, super impressive. I was able to do 70. I had an 85-pound dumbbell, which I guess I could try because I think I had a little bit more left in the tank. But really good test of grip strength. And, it's funny, man. Like Dennis is strong in those like crazy, feats of strength kind of thing. And dude, I mean, we've had him on the podcast. I'm really glad that we're having these episodes where it's the four of us on, because you ask him like how he's done it, and it's just been consistent training. We've had him on the podcast a couple times.
Because he's 45?
No, 47, I think.
47, yeah.
But his big thing is just like strike when the iron's hot. So not push it unnecessarily, which is like, I think the thing that I do the worst, because I get super caught up in like, hey, I'm training for this goal and I have a plan and I have to follow it. And yes, it's very good that I'm like very committed to the plan, but many times it's been at a detriment, where there are definitely times where like my body starts giving me like, a small red flag and then a medium red flag and then a bigger red flag. And I'm just like, no, the plan is the plan. Gotta go. And it ends up biting me in the butt. So that's one of the things that I think he's done really well. And I think that that's allowed him, and I know there are other people like this out there, but I think that his superpower is having the ability to be flexible and really get after it when his body is ready to get after it and pull back when he needs to. So what that has allowed him to do is, over decades of training, he's trained more than everyone else, right? Because he's just been consistent. Like, has he been absolutely perfect training his butt off for, 12 weeks straight? No, but he's been more consistent than anyone and hasn't taken any extended time off for, 20, 30, 40 years. And you do that for 20, 30, 40 years and, you can hold 185 with one arm while you hang on a pull-up bar. He's also always been, and I've always appreciated this about him, because he was my, first coach, and in many ways still my coach. And when it comes to like strength training and CrossFit and all of that stuff, and he's always been really, really like disciplined with how well you move, not just what you're actually moving.
Yeah.
Like always. He's always been the guy that like, we're maxing out on a lift, and if it doesn't look good, that's it. He's done for the day. Like, he's not getting sloppy just to get a certain amount of weight on the bar. And I think that that's also, I mean, the proof's in the pudding has served him really well, where I know a lot of people that like, it's just about the number and like, did it go from the floor to up? And that's all that matters, versus like, were the mechanics there? Were the mechanics sound? He also like, dude, you'll never see that guy in knee sleeves, in grips, in a belt, in any of that stuff. And he'll talk about it too. Like he gives people a hard time for that stuff all the time. Cause he's a big believer that like, hey man,
you got to be able, but not to cut you off, but like, dude, how about the last podcast we did with him? And I was asking him, hey, how'd you feel when you were pulling 500? And he's like, what do you mean? Like, I'm like, well, yeah, dude, like, are you like, do you like have like are you worried about like risk of injury? Like, blah, blah. He's like, no, like literally looking at him on the podcast, I'm like, bro, this guy never thinks about it the way I do. Like, bro, as soon as I get over 400 pounds, I'm thinking to myself, I don't know if I should be doing this. Like, And it looked like, honestly, like when I asked him the question, he almost made me feel like I was stupid for asking it, right? Like, I mean, right? Like he just was like, no, I don't think that way. Like, Like, I'm comfortable in my ability to lift up 500 pounds. I don't think even for a second that I'm going to injure myself. I'm just like, wow, that was powerful.
Double overhand grip, no belt, nothing.
Dude, I want the grip, the no shoes, maybe even 2 belts actually, if I need to.
Little smelling salts. Have you ever done smelling salts?
Yes, but not to like their full potential. So like, dude,
I've never.
Because when I was back in the day, I competed in a couple of powerlifting competitions, and they would just be like present. And like Mark Bell, when I would go train with those guys, like it's just present, right? It was just like the ammonium, and they just like, you could do it like kind of like weak, like the way I would do it is kind of like a little, but if you do it like the right way, I mean, that shit just gets you fired up. And so I never did to like its full potential, but yes, I have done smelling salts at least enough. So
this whole conversation though is a good segue into my not so positive Houston Marathon update. It's actually been a real bummer for the past week. So like I was saying before, man, I get very fixated on like the plans for these big goals. And dude,
aren't you competing in like 2 weeks from where we're having the conversation right now?
3 weeks from when we're recording, and a few days from when this comes out, because it's coming out Monday the 13th, so it would be this Sunday. So yeah, man, I mean, I was a little anxious about traveling to California for a week, because it was, at that time, I think we were 6 weeks away from the race. So we're like in the middle of this block, like 50-mile weeks, like really tough, like 18-mile long runs with a bunch of miles at marathon pace, like doing really good work. And I'm feeling really good. So I was like, all right, how am I going to be able to continue that while we're traveling, not getting the best sleep, whatever? And I was like, I'm just going to try my best. And that's exactly what I did. I did most of my runs, not all of them. One of them I did on the Trueform treadmill at the gym, and it was all good. I didn't think anything of it, but thinking back on it, I did a 14-mile long run in Ventura when we were with Ariel's uncle, and the hills there are insane. And I started my run going down a hill that was as steep as the hill at your house, so like stupid steep.
Oh,
and that wasn't the best idea.
That's
in
steep.
retrospect. So I did that, ran 14 miles after that, and didn't feel anything crazy. The next morning, Ariel pointed out that I was limping. And usually after my long runs, I'm like a little beat up. My ankles and my feet are just a little upset. But usually I take that day off, and then I'm perfect by the next day. But this didn't kind of go away. Then I kept running, because again, got to stick to the plan. That would have been a good first like little red flag to like, hey man, don't push it. You're traveling, like everything's off. Clearly you're like a little bit more beat up than usual. Like you missing 2 days of your program is not going to derail anything. And this is in retrospect me, but in the moment, I'm like, got to hit every run, the exact mileage, whatever. So then I kept running. When we were in Santana Row, I would run to Campbell and back, and got my 7 miles in, my 8 miles in. I did the speed workout on Wednesday. And again, I still kept feeling this like weird like pain shooting down my one leg, and like, but it would go away once you warm up, and it was kind of whatever. Then you have like the long plane ride, then you have the drive home, then you have the shitty sleep the first night because the kids were a little bit jet lagged. They're waking up, like they're not going to bed on time. Anyway, I go and do my long run when I got back, which was supposed to be a 3-hour run. So what I had programmed was, hey, go run for 3 hours. Don't worry too much about the distance or the pace. We just want to train you being on your feet and running for 3 hours.
Yeah.
And dude, I got 14 miles in and I had to walk because I couldn't take how bad my legs were hurting. And I was like, shit, like I'm just really beat up from all the travel, whatever. Took Sunday off. Monday went back out, ran 7 miles. And I was like, all right, something's wrong. Like now the pain isn't even going away.
Like a stress fracture?
I don't know. I still don't know. But that Monday was when I was like, all right, I got to take some time off. So talked to my coach. We were like, all right, let's just give it some time, see if it gets better. I've been doing the bike and the rower because anything non-impact seems to be fine. And I still want to like keep the aerobic base, but it's been well over a week now. So we're recording on a Friday. So not this Monday, but the Monday before was the last time I did like an actual programmed run. Dude, and I haven't been able to run since then. I did 3 miles yesterday just to kind of like see if I can get back into it. And I don't know, I didn't wake up worse, but I didn't wake up better either. So I don't know, man. I'm at a weird spot right now. I actually looked up this morning. Unfortunately, Houston doesn't allow you to defer your entry So like, if I don't do it, I don't do it. If I looked it up and they were like, hey, you can just keep your registration for next year, I think I would have taken that as a sign. I would have just been like, whatever, I'll find something else to do later in the year. And then I'll just save my registration for next year. But I can't do that. The Airbnb reservation, I looked that up. It's not refundable. So that's kind of a bummer. I literally looked it up this morning and I was like, hey, if I can cancel both of those, then easy decision. I'm just not going to
It's
do it.
one day. The Airbnb is one day.
No, we booked. I think we booked 2 nights, just because I didn't want to like drive back after the race.
But how about your like? Obviously, like, have you done like you've done like foam rolling and all that kind of stuff? Dude. It's not your IT band. It's not like your calf. I mean, what like?
I think it's sciatica, because when I really get into my glute, it relieves it a little bit, definitely. So I think it's sciatica, but I think it might be sciatica and IT band. I think what happened, looking back on it and doing a lot of research using AI, by the way, which we can talk about in a little bit. It seems like what happened is I aggravated it going down that super steep hill and then just kept running on it instead of letting it rest for a little bit after I did that, to the point where now it's like pretty upset and it's causing a little bit of nerve pain. So anyway, super bummed, not completely discouraged that it's not going to happen. I'm going to try and run again tomorrow. And as long as it's still getting even marginally better with me being able to run, I think I did enough work leading up to this point to where I'm kind of just in maintenance mode anyway. And as long as I can get the volume under and it doesn't get worse, I'll go out there and I'll put my best foot forward and do the race. But I think that if it continues to get worse and I just can't run, then it would be stupid for me to go and run 26 miles and potentially hurt it really bad.
You don't want to injure yourself like where you're like down and out for whatever. I mean, this is a good example, right? Like, what's the why behind doing the marathon? Well, it gave you something to train for. Like, your goal is sub 3 hours. You hit a half marathon. You did well there. You achieved your goal. And now it's like, okay, well, why are you doing it? Well, you want to push yourself. Like, we just got done doing a high rocks, like whatever. And it's like, but then all of a sudden, if you go out there and you run, let's just say you ran a 3 hour marathon and you felt like shit, like halfway in, you just kind of gritted it through. And then all of a sudden, like, where does that leave you for the next like month or two? I mean, are you like debilitated? Like, can you not function and do shit with the kids? I don't know. I'm just saying, like, if it was more of those things like, hey man, it's just pain, you got to push through. Like, I'd be like, yeah, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, pushing through the pain and like getting through it and achieving your goals, I think is really important because it's not going to be easy. Like, even if you're 100%, running a sub 3 hour marathon is not going to be easy. Like, it's just that simple because you got, you know, like Seth was talking about, you got to do hard shit. But if that's at the expense of your body being so messed up that you can't do anything for like the next month, that's the problem.
Yeah, I think that's the one thing that is good news is that like it doesn't hurt at all unless I'm running. So it would be different if I was in just like, I'm in pain, like I'm like grumpy, I can't go for a walk with the kids, I can't care. Like, that would be a problem. The thing is, it's literally just the impact of as soon as I go from walking to running. So as soon as literally my whole body weight is landing on that leg, instantly it lights up, but nothing else bugs it. So I completely agree with you. And that's why I think that like, if I run on Saturday and I run on Monday and it just continues to get a little better every day, even though it's still there, but I'm running, I'm just going to like, fuck it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to try and get right back on training and do it, because then at least that I feel like that would tell me that, hey, you know, I heard it doing this really steep downhill. I'll avoid that stuff in my training, but it's still kind of like recovering, even though I'm running, and it's not going to get worse. But if it continues to get worse, I kind of have to pull the plug, because what I don't want to do is, to your point, I don't want to go out there and just run the marathon to hurt myself. I'm also like not so confident in what my end goal is that like, if I'm not able to do some sort of training between now and race day, that I'm going to go and crush my goal. I don't think that's going to happen. And I also don't want to go and just like finish the marathon. Like, I don't want this to come off like, sounding like super like, oh man, I'm super fit, but I know I can run a marathon. Like I could go out now and run a marathon. Like that's not why I'm doing it, right? Like I'm not doing it to get a finisher's medal. I'm doing it because like I had this goal and I really want to hit this goal. So for me, it would be more worth, let me heal up, get healthy, find something in the spring, get completely out of this, ramp up training again, and just revisit it. It would just be a bummer because I would lose the registration and maybe we'd still go and just make a weekend out of it. But yeah, man, bummer. But on that note, the one thing that has been super helpful is just, like every night, I told you we like during bedtime with Shay, we like, say thank you and stuff. And we like do our little moment. Kids just put everything into perspective. And as much as this has been a bummer, I think in the grand scheme of things, especially like coming off of Christmas and like family, I'm not nowhere near as bummed or disappointed as I think I used to be with stuff like this, where like it was everything. And I would honestly like spiral down, which is silly thinking back on it, right? Because it's like, dude, like whatever.
It's just a fitness. It's just a fitness thing.
Fitness thing. But in the past, it would have absolutely been like I would have been a train wreck. I would have been moody, whatever. Now it's kind of like, I mean, am I disappointed? Yes, but like in the grand scheme of things, who fucking cares?
Well, I mean, I think I told you this. A buddy of mine, and we talked about this on the podcast, but I think it's a good segue. Is that if it's a money problem, it isn't really a problem. And that it kind of is a segue into what you're talking about. So like, if the problem can be solved by money, it's not really a problem. And when my friend shared that with me, at first I was like, let me think about that more. And as you get older and as life moves forward, right, you start realizing that there's a lot of truth in that. And I'm coming from that with the perspective of I'm also not living on the streets, and maybe in that case, this is my perspective on it, right? Is that if the problem can be solved, if it's a money problem, it's not really a problem. And when you think about it deep down, like let's just say your fitness goals, like it is a problem. It's a problem. You're not feeling 100%. You're not gonna be able to hit your 3-hour marathon. Hypothetically, that's a problem because you set all these goals for yourself and you were stoked about it, and now you can't achieve it. Okay, but that's not as big of a problem as like a problem that can't be solved by money, right? Like, maybe you're an example. Maybe I'm butchering this, but here's the point I'm trying to make. When your kid gets sick, when your kid's going through shit, when your family's sick, I'm talking real sick, real problems, real stuff. It puts things in a perspective that, you should be lucky to only have a money problem. You know what I'm saying? That's what I'm thinking about. Like, because right now, dude, we've gone through like this year, 2024, our family had a lot of adversity and a lot of difficulty. And a lot of that could not be solved by money. It didn't matter how much money I made, didn't matter what was going on. I couldn't throw money at the problem. And then you realize that those problems or cancer or this or that, like those are real problems. And so you should almost be grateful. And it's a reshift in your mindset that like now the biggest problem I'm having currently today is like, oh, it's a money problem. It's like, oh, I want to be able to provide more. I want to be able to do more. It's like, dude, hey, if it's a money problem, it's not really a problem. And again, people listening, you could take that with a grain of salt, however that affects you. I understand there's people where money is truly a problem. What I'm trying to say is just look at it through a different lens. That if you could have gratitude that your biggest problem is a money problem, dude, that's a blessing in itself, because there's a lot of problems that cannot be solved by having more money.
I mean, I couldn't agree more, man. And it's powerful and it's important. And in many ways, it is what I've been feeling, in that just kids give you a different perspective. You put your kids to bed at night and he's healthy and happy, and that's all that matters, man. And, they wake up and they have a big smile on their face, and it doesn't matter. Like none of that stuff matters. It gives you such a good perspective. But yeah, I think that a good way to reframe what you were saying is that if it isn't a problem where you would give up literally every cent you had to solve it if you could, then it's not a problem. Because that's essentially what you're saying. Is there are some things that, like, if it meant you could pay everything, just empty the bank account and this problem would go away, you wouldn't even think twice about it. You would be like, done. Doesn't matter. Like, it's worth it. And I think that as long as you're not in that situation, you're like incredibly lucky and blessed, for sure.
Yeah. It's just a vantage point. Yeah, it's just a vantage point to have. It's like if you're sitting there listening to this podcast, like I am right now, actually today, like this is where I'm at. If like the biggest problems you're talking about have to do with like, again, providing more, doing this more, doing this better, whatever. That's a huge blessing in itself, dude. Like that, because there's so many people out there with so many more problems that they wish they had that problem. You know what I mean? And their problems you can't solve with more money, right? I mean, shit. You see kids in the hospital all the time. It's like they'd give up everything. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just that's something I've been leaning on as of recently, and it's a good way to be because it just allows you to stay more grounded, I think.
Yeah. I think it's, there's a lot of people out there that would give anything to be like, hey, my leg hurts a little bit, so I can't run a 3-hour marathon. There's a lot of people out there to be like, I'll take it. Give me a little bit of leg and a little bit of pain in my leg, and I can't run a 3-hour marathon. I'll take that for.
Yesterday I was coaching class at the gym, and one of our members, she recently had her leg amputated from the knee down, and because she had some major nerve issues and major issues, and so she had it amputated. And here we are, like adjusting the workout for her, and it's all perspective, right? You're talking about
all perspective. No, for sure, dude, for sure. It's like, what are you really upset about? But I had a question for you with perspective, and specifically giving kids that perspective early on. One thing that I remember when I was coaching in Marin, actually, there was a member, Bill, great guy. I recently touched base with him, really miss him, really smart guy. He shared with me that they had this tradition on Christmas where instead of waking up first thing in the morning and opening gifts, they would actually go into San Francisco and deliver meals to the homeless. And that it was a really great just change of expectation for the kids of like going out there and associating that day with like giving and giving back and so on and so forth. What are some, because I know you work a lot with philanthropy, like what are some opportunities that you've seen? Because I think that you're fortunate in that, like, what that other side looks like. And obviously I don't want to say fortunate in that there's anything good about some of the stuff that, your family's gone through. But I think that is a superpower in itself that like, dude, you've been there, and that immediately gives you the perspective to where you can have all these superficial problems happen. And you're like, dude, that is nothing. Is there organizations that, I would imagine could go volunteer with like kids in the hospital or anything, or just a way to like give back, but also just like see it? Because I think you can hear a million podcasts of people saying, hey, there are families that literally have their kids in the hospital, and you can't imagine what that is, and it puts it in perspective. But I think that like experiencing it is something completely different. Are there opportunities out there where you can do good and also just like you know what I'm saying? Or is that kind of like not, would that not even be like an appropriate thing to do, I guess?
That's the thing, right? I think it's a good question. So like, so by the way, when this podcast releases, we're about, what is it? January. So March would be 2 months, right?
2 months.
January, 2 months. We're 2 months out from Ava's Kitchen, which is our annual fundraiser for pediatric cancer that Ashley champions. And I think this is year 7, if I'm not mistaken.
Awesome event.
Yeah. And so if you want more information about that, make sure to check out the podcast show notes under avaskitchen.org and grab your tickets, because it's badass food. It's phenomenal, right? Huge live auction is great. But I think to your question, that's a really interesting question. Ashley and I, we had an opportunity one time, well, a couple of times. We've spent time ourselves in the hospital, but when we went back, we went and we're giving out $1,000 checks to families as part of like this, part of like what we do. And it was difficult being there because to your point, it's a little awkward. It's a little uncomfortable because you're trying to be there and your heart's in the right place. You want to be able to like help and you want to like whatever. But these people are going through something like so difficult that you feel like you're almost like, I don't want to say you're like trying to like, your heart's in the right place. You're trying to help, but it's just like there's a discomfort because you feel like you shouldn't even be there in the first place. You know what I mean? So I think the best thing to do would be to look up like an organization like Nigo.org. They do joy jars. I think like filling joy jars.
That was an awesome experience. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I think stuff like that, because then you can start getting pictures of kids actually receiving it. And you can feel that connection between, hey, the work I'm doing to build this joy jar is actually going to someone and you're helping. I think getting kids to do that type of stuff, I think is really important because like, for example, at our school, this was like maybe 6 months ago, the Joy Factory came and we had all the kids in the school fill these joy jars from Nigu. And like, that's a good example where a kid could feel like, okay, what is going on here? They could write a letter and they could actually see like, hey, this is something I could actually do to then give. And then you can see the pictures later on of a kid receiving. So I think those kind of things are helpful versus like giving money, because like kids can't understand like just giving a donation, but they could definitely understand filling these joy jars and then giving them to kids. So that would be like something I think that's very practical, is especially if you're in California, Southern California, you can go to Nigu and the Joy Jar Factory and they do a ton of great stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good point, man. I can't imagine it would almost feel like this invasion of privacy, right?
That's
like
what
it's got to be such a, man.
Yeah, I don't think Ashley and I don't want to speak for her, but I don't know if we would ever do the checks again the way we did them. Because the way we did them, we went room to room and we were just handing them to them. And for a lot of the families, it was great because we do 100 families $1,000 each every Christmas, right? And this time we decided to go around CHOC, which is Children's Hospital of Orange County, and hand deliver them. And in this particular situation, one of the children ended up passing away right then. And like, it was like a moment where I'm just like, dude, I'm good. I should not be here right now. And it was just, I don't know. It just wasn't the right fit. So I think moving forward, we'll try and keep a little bit more distance there and like allow for that privacy, just wasn't, but I'm glad we did it because it was a good experience to like learn what we want to do in the future and how we want to, give.
Yeah, man. Ava's Kitchen though. Awesome event, man. Awesome event. We're hoping to go again, and I hope people go and check it out. You guys do a great job, and it's a really good cause, man. Really good cause. And Ava will be there this year.
Yeah, she will.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So make sure to put it on your calendars, guys. It's March 22nd. And I think obviously, we're biased, but I think it's 100% worth coming to the great state of California in the Bay Area. We're going to have it a phenomenal, and we're going to have it hey, speaking of great state of California, I have something on that. But while I'm on this subject, Ava's Kitchen, March 22nd, grab your tickets, come to the men's club. I'll be hosting a very special men's club, and we'll probably be giving away some stuff from Yeti at that one, or some t-shirts, something. So if you listen to the podcast and you and your family want to get behind pediatric cancer, come to Ava's Kitchen, March 22nd. We'd love to see you out there. Check out the podcast show notes. But speaking of California, Prop 36, bro. Prop 36 worked. Did you see the video of the girls who were stealing from Ulta, like makeup? Did you see that one?
Yeah.
Dude, so these girls are stealing from Ulta, like a makeup thing. Ava likes it. And they get in the back of the cop car because they get arrested. And you just see the video of them saying like, dude, we just got a felony. And the lady's like, what are you talking about? She's like, yeah, the rules changed. We got a felony. And you get to see the look on the other woman's face like, oh boy. So it's working, man. California spoke. 70% said yes to this prop. And now you're seeing people, the proof is in the pudding. Now people are taking it more seriously. Like even like the buddy who texts you, right? Like it's going to change things. And so come to the great state of California because we're making progress in the right direction, in my opinion.
What's the maybe you know this, maybe you don't. What's the case for like not doing that? Like why was that? Why was that even not a thing before? Like I think
what they're trying to do is maybe
steel man that case. Well, what is it?
I think what it was is that they didn't want to fill up the jails with like petty theft, and they wanted to give these people like an opportunity to like not go to jail for petty crimes under whatever amount of money. And it just backfired because people just started taking advantage. There's nothing that anybody would do. Like they would just arrest them or whatever. And there's just nothing there. So I think the heart of it had to do with the jail system, the prison system, but I could be wrong. I don't know any other reason why you wouldn't want to do it other than just being extremely too, like, dude, if you break a law, you should be punished for it. Otherwise it'll continue to escalate. And I think that's what you saw.
For sure. I mean, you saw a lot of this back when we lived in Marin. Just people shoplift all the time. Because why wouldn't you? It's like you either won't get caught or you'll get a slap on the wrist, or because it's just a slap on the wrist, like cops have limited time and energy. Like why would you risk your life? Because you also never know how stuff's going to go down, even if you're stopping someone just for like, petty theft. If you know that they're just going to go get booked and be right out, why are you going to risk your life as law enforcement to have that happen, if you don't even know that they're going to go away or anything's going to happen. So you just like let it happen, and you get a lot of the videos that you saw over the past years in places like San Francisco and California. So I'm glad that it's moving in the right direction.
We're back, baby. So come out to
We're
San
so
Jose,
back.
California. We're back. Come to San Jose, California. Join the men's club in person. So the men's club, for the first time last week, I got guys to take off their shirt. And it was 100% my idea. Gabe had nothing to do with it. And Gabe encouraged taking off the shirt. We had like, 7 guys take off their shirt. Dude, this week, bro, I'm confident. Tomorrow morning, we're when we're recording this today, it's tomorrow morning. Or is today? No, Saturday morning. So whatever day it is today. And dude, I'm telling you, man, we're going to get at least 15 tomorrow morning. I'm confident. I'm going to pump it up hard.
Dude, men should just be proud to show off their hard work, because I know that the guys that meet you for those workouts have fucking like absolutely transformed how they look. And that has permeated into other areas of their life. Why wouldn't they want to show that off? And I think that A, they should be super proud and show that off. And B, for the men that go, or for the men that honestly like then follow on social media and are like, man, like, I don't know if I would take my shirt off. Why is that? You know,
Right.
like why is that? And if that's something that bothers you, just do something about it.
Dude.
No, like, and I think that the most important part about us leaning into this messaging of like men looking a certain way and being proud of how they look is that there is zero shame and judgment in how you got here, the circumstances that got you there, or whatever. Like none of that matters. There's zero judgment here, zero like negativity. All we're saying is that, okay, but what are you going to do about it now? And don't you want to be more confident? Don't you want to feel better in your own skin? Don't you want to be the guy that like is the most excited to take his shirt off and show off the hard work and the habits and the discipline that have gotten you where you've gotten? I mean, I know I would. And I hope that a lot of men out there agree. And again, if you're just not there, then just change it. That's it.
Or you're getting there, right? Like,
right. Or you're getting there.
Yeah, I mean, I had guys come up to me afterwards and like, hey, man, like, I didn't feel quite comfortable yet, but like, I'm getting there. And I'm like, all right.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
and
Fuck
so
yeah.
like, that's the path, right? Like, hey, so we introduced it for the first time, and next week we'll do it again. Next week we'll do it again. Next week we'll do it again. And it might take a day. It might take a week. It might take a month. It might take a year. But eventually the goal is to have 100 dudes, shirts off, being jacked and capable. That's the goal. Like, and I'm on a mission for it. It's funny. I had a videographer here for the first time yesterday, and a new guy we're using. And he's like, dude, tell me a little bit more about Train Hard. It's like, dude, Train Hard? Just trying to make highly capable men that look and act the part. And he's like, yeah, I could align with that. I was like, yeah, dude, who wouldn't? Like, who is not going to say they want to have more capable men? And, you know, and so anyways, that's what we're on. That's the mission we're on. Come see us here in the Bay Area and join the men's club if you want.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah, man.
All right. Well, bro, I don't know, man. Next week, I want to dive into something we were talking about with the TRT with Josh, right? We were talking about for blokes, right? And I definitely want to dive into some of those things that you and I were talking about like not really understanding or relating. I think it's a good subject for us to dive into on the podcast next. Make sure that you guys go back and check out all of their episodes. Like the one with Seth that we put out, maybe a month ago at this point, was absolutely incredible, dude. This guy, like we said it on the podcast, like he seems like he could be a kind of guy that could use like an extension cord to kill you 14 different ways, but yet he's the most subtle, calm, collected, and had some really good feedback. So make sure you check out all of their guest episodes. We also have the episodes with Dennis and MDV. Make sure you check those ones out. And of course, the ones with Gabe and I. But more important than anything, right? If you get value from these episodes, share them with a friend. Let's continue to raise the bar, level up. That's the mission that we're on, especially in 2025. And we're not stopping. So share the episode, keep training hard, keep getting after it. Have an awesome, kick-ass 2025.